Why do most businesses fail before they reach 15 years? We're going to talk about that. We started our business, actually, it was the week of 9/11, easy to remember. September 10th, 2001 is when I first started using the name of our company, and the next day is when 9/11 happened. From that point till around 2007, we were growing really fast. We made Future 50 in our city. We were growing around 60% a year. You know, some people may say that's not very fast. Our company's growing 1,000. Our goal all along was to bootstrap the company, which means we didn't take any outside money. That way we had total control over everything, and we just want to grow as fast as we profitably can. So that ended up being, around anywhere from 30 to 50%, up to 60% a year. We had grown to about 30 employees, and I think we were around $6 million or so in revenue. A lot of our business was to the mortgage industry. We had tried to diversify some into some other industries, but it's really difficult when you're in an industry that's just going gangbusters, which the mortgage industry was in the early 2000s, and anything else you diversify into, it's not going to grow at the same rate. So in 2008, actually 2007, we knew about the economic collapse before everybody else, because our customers started calling us and saying they're going out of business. That was early 2007. So again, early 2007, started getting calls from AmeriQuest and Ditech and all these mortgage companies saying we're packing up, and all of a sudden we lost between half and 2/3 of our business was gone in 3 months. Boom. Oh, take a look at this. That's a view right there. I'm not doing anything dangerous here, not too dangerous, but I do have two people I know in Tennessee. One I kind of knew of, and one I personally knew. A lady whose brother was on Raccoon Mountain, I think riding side by side, and saw a lookout or a nice view. Got to take a picture, and I think like a short happened, he tripped somehow over his flip-flop or Croc, which that's rule number one, is I wouldn't wear flip-flops or Crocs hiking. Number two, don't get too close to the edge. And he tripped and fell, and he was able to hang on to a tree or root or something, but he was hanging there, and he couldn't hang on, and he ended up dropping, and that was all she wrote. So I'm trying to be careful of where I walk here, because this is infinitely higher. I think I'm at 11,000 feet here. Again, a lot of this is just woods like this, but I've definitely gotten to some drop-offs. You don't want to make the wrong step. So we lost 2/3 of our business. We had to cut the company back as far as we could. Now the thing that saved us, number one, we had diversified. So again, we lost 2/3 of our business, but if we'd been all mortgage, we would have lost all our business. So number one, we were able to hang on to a couple $1 million worth of business. So that helped. The second thing is, during those first 5 or 6 years, we were doing good. And I talked in another video about opportunists versus obstacles. People that are, conservative and trying to see obstacles versus opportunists. I'm the opportunist. I would have spent every dime that we were making, but our CFO, and this is imperative when if you have a financial advisor, CFO, whatever, that they are, taking care of you. He requested or required that we put aside, I think it was about half of our profits or whatever, some percentage. So we had, I don't know, like $500,000 set aside, for a rainy day. And if it hadn't been for that, we would not have made it through the kind of the rebuild once 2007, 2008 happened. After the pullback, we had to lay people off, unfortunately, and as we started coming back, we had to rebuild, and the mortgage industry was dead, for several years. We were able to win one of the largest mortgage companies. This is coming back. It's one of the biggest ones you guys would know. And it's not our business, and we diversified some into healthcare, dentists, dental. We do marketing, by the way, marketing, data analytics. One of the companies that had helped save us, one of our larger customers, I think it was our largest customer actually, it was one of the biggest companies that was bailed out. It was in consumer loans and insurance. So they got a government bailout. And I remember going to meet with them, and they pulled their marketing way back. They became much smaller, but they still were a nice size account. And so I went out to meet them, and they were in the Midwest. And the senior VP over marketing, I still remember this, where he looked at me and he said, look, Dave, I appreciate you guys holding our pricing, even though we've shrunk back our volumes. Our business is kind of volume based. So he goes, I know we don't have a contract. He goes, I can't sign a new contract because of these government regulations with the bailout. We're not allowed to sign any new contracts. But we're going to be with you. My word is like oak, and we'll be working with you. So that was my Jerry Maguire moment. I was thinking, okay, great. If you remember Jerry Maguire, my word is like oak, with the quarterback prospect he was trying to sign.
You know I don't do contracts, but what you do have is my word, and it's stronger than oak.
So, and I handed it to the guy for 5 years. They stayed with us, and they grew back. They grew it to be a big account again, and he stayed with us the whole time. I remember it was November of 2013. I get word, I think I actually saw it on LinkedIn, that he was retiring. I immediately called our VP of sales. I'm like, do you know, Bob's retiring? And he goes, oh, no, I didn't know that. And I said, we need to get in front of him and make sure we know who's replacing him. Well, unfortunately, it was too late. So they'd hired somebody new that came in from Citibank, or one of the big lenders, and we lost that business. So that was one of our biggest accounts. Well, again, we also had acquired one of the larger mortgage companies in probably 2010, 2011. So we had them for a couple of years. They were doing big volumes as well. About a week later, we get a call from them. Hey, we've decided to redo our marketing, and we're going to go all digital. We're going to stop all of our direct mail, which we were doing direct mail programs for them. Boom. Our second largest account is gone. You cannot make this stuff up. Then, about a week later, this all happened within about a 3-week span in November of 2013. Our third or fourth largest account was the company they called it DSO, the Dental Service Organization. They owned about 80 dental clinics, and they targeted is probably the wrong word, but they serviced Medicaid patients. So they would service Medicaid. Well, they got in trouble. Like 2 of their centers out of 80 got in trouble with the Chuck Grassley, and he came after them, and they ended up shutting them down. Bam, third account gone. So again, well, here we go, step back again. We had diversified. We had still were setting money aside, thank goodness. So we didn't have as much to set aside, but we set what we could aside and regrouped again. We didn't have to pull back quite as much as we did the first time, but we did pull back, and then I had to work on growing back again. So in those two circumstances, the things that helped us were we still being diversified helps, and saving money, holding money back so that you have cash flow. Now again, I've mentioned this in other videos. In my business, I don't have inventory to worry about. I don't have cash flow because people pay me in advance. So that also helps. That helped a lot. Watch your expenses and don't overextend. So after 2013, on the third go round, we decided to do 2 things somewhat differently. Instead of diversifying into other industries completely, healthcare, dental, all that, insurance, we decided to diversify just within the financial services sector. And I highly recommend that. I think trying to get into other industries that you don't know as well, or we didn't know as well, it just made us where we weren't quite as sticky. We weren't quite as valuable, to be quite honest. So we diversified within financial services. So we already knew mortgage as well. We started working on auto lending and consumer lenders, and really try to penetrate those. And those are 3 big industries. So that was number 1. We diversified within the sector that we already knew. The second thing that we did is we transformed the company. We had done some platform, some software development, but it was very minimal, I would say, at that point. And we decided to invest a lot more into software as a service, digital platforms, self-service, things that would allow us to grow and service our customers through automation versus having to hire additional people. I think this ability to adapt is one of the things that just hurts a lot of companies, even big companies. I mean, when I was in school back in Atlanta, I used to work for a law firm, and we represented Coca-Cola. So the daughter of the chairman of the board of Coca-Cola worked there. A couple of, I think the senior attorney, first kind of corporate attorney for Coca-Cola worked there. So because they had the relationship with Coca-Cola, they actually had fountains on every floor of this law firm. It was a big law firm in Atlanta. We had free Coke. So I was drinking Coke in the morning, afternoon, evening. I was pretty much a Coca-Cola expert. And that was the time when Coca-Cola decided they'd done some market research. I want to say Michael Jackson was representing Pepsi. Pepsi was kind of the new generation, and they were appealing to a lot of young people. So Coke decided to come out with new Coke. They changed their formula, the secret formula they'd had since like 1900, and this is around probably 1985, I'm guessing. They were going to change the formula, and again, I was a marketing major, college, whatever, sophomore maybe, freshman or sophomore. And even I knew, this sounds like a terrible idea. I was literally like, I need to stock up on Coke. They weren't calling it Classic Coke yet. I need to stock up because what am I going to do when they give us this crappy new Coke? Sorry, the trail is like a creek over here. So Coke did this big publicity tour, and I was in the Trust Company Tower in downtown Atlanta, right in the kind of the central city park of Atlanta. And they blocked off the park. They had like a circus, put these circus tents, had all these booths set up, giving free new Coke. And I remember it was like a nasty day. It foreshadowed the future of new Coke. Because it just did not do well. It was a nasty day, raining, yucky, and just total disaster. So fast forward, I think it was probably 7-8 months. I don't know the exact time. I feel like it was about 7-8 months. And Coke realized the error of their ways. They flipped, reintroduced what they called Classic Coke, and moved on and became, again, one of the top brands. And they try to spin it in such a way that, that was our idea, that our marketing guy, Sergio, whatever his name was. I can tell you that is not the case. They were not, this was not some master ingenious plan, but I will give Coke credit for trying to innovate and trying to stay ahead, because that's what happens to a lot of companies is, they get stale and they try to keep doing the same thing and they don't innovate, and next thing you know, they become obsolete. So, the fact that they did, and that might be what actually led Coke into all these other beverages now. They decided to diversify across other beverage categories. They've got Powerade, and I don't know what all different brands they have now, but they've got a ton of different brands that they've released now. So they own the beverage market. But they should have never gotten rid of Classic Coke. that was a terrible that was a terrible idea. And that comes from the experience of a freshman in college. Back to how you finance your company. Again, the two primary ways, maybe three ways, I guess. One is, you self-finance it, or you get some sales first, and then based on those sales, the money starts coming in, then you start growing and adding in additional resources. And nowadays, that's easier than it was, back when I started a company 25 years ago. it was a lot more difficult. It was possible, but it's hard to find, contract workers and all that. Where, now there's all kinds of apps. You got Fiverr and different ways you can easily, outsource, pretty much anything you want to outsource. That's much easier now. So you can, self-finance it or again, get sales. You can take out a personal loan, and that always kind of scares me. But I know some companies that have done that successfully. One of my first jobs out of school was a company called Flight Safety, and they sold similar training to pilots. And the owner, the guy who started the company, I may have this wrong, but this is my recollection. His name was Al Yulchi, and he was the pilot for the Pan Am executives. So he flew them around. Again, he recognized the opportunity, the need of simulators. Back then they had like these either, most of the time you did your training in the plane, which is, expensive and sort of dangerous. And they also had these like cardboard simulators that they would use. So he ended up starting a simulator company, eventually got into technology and built simulators and that sort of thing. And he did this company, he started by taking out a home equity loan, on his house. And I can't remember the number, he a couple $100,000, something like that, to start the company. I also remember there was a mechanic there, and he was one of the first, he's like a simulator technician. And so I think he said he had like $50,000, and he saw Mr. Yulchi and, taking out a loan and investing all his money into this company. And so Winston, the simulator technician, he took his $50,000 and he put it all into the company as well. And that company became, it was in Forbes magazine for years. It's one of the top 10 return on investment stocks. It was later bought out by Warren Buffett, became part of Berkshire Hathaway. And, they both, Mr. Yulchi became a billionaire off of that. So that's of course a big success story. Take out a home equity loan and turn it into a $1 billion company. And that does not happen to all of us, or to everyone, but that's certainly doable. And if you really believe in something, in Mr. Yulchi's eyes, this was not really that great of a risk because he knew what the need was and knew he was filling a gap in the market that just didn't exist. And so, built a great company out of it. And the third thing is you can get some investors. And again, that was the least of mine because I guess it's just my personality, but I had worked for several companies, some big companies, which I hated just because, hate is the wrong word, but, they would do some things that just was like, what are they doing? I didn't, they don't communicate what they're doing. You don't understand why they're doing it. And I just didn't like that. And then working for some smaller companies, I just would see, these private equity guys that would come in and just, I can't tell how many companies I saw get bought out. They were successful companies. Private equity would buy them and just run it right into the ground. I know more that failed than that succeeded by a long shot. And I would argue that's happened to a lot of big companies too. I think right now that's happening with Southwest Airlines. They were for 50 years one of the best investments as far as an airline, best examples of an airline, became the largest U.S. domestic airline. And they did things differently. They had their own Blue Ocean. They're in the book Blue Ocean, actually. Low fares, fun. They had their open border, open seating policy. They got the planes turned quicker than anybody else and kept ticket prices low. Didn't charge for bags. And in 2020, their stock kind of came back down a little bit because of COVID and had some investors come in. Now these guys think they can run an airline. And, they may turn a profit in the short run, but in my opinion, they're going to be the end of Southwest, certainly the end of Southwest dominance. Got off on a tangent here, but my dad worked for Delta Airlines for 30 years as a mechanic. So I flew Delta exclusively. I actually flew first class. This was back in the old days where, you they didn't have all the upgrades and all that. So in first classes, often it was empty, and so if it was empty, then we could sit there being they called it non-rev. So my mom always checked the flights and would find flights that had a lot of seats, and we would always sit in first class. So until I was probably like 19 or 20, maybe older than that, I thought on flights to California, everybody got filet mignon, and they had this little ice cream sundae cart they would bring down, and do you want vanilla or chocolate ice cream? Do you want strawberry or hot fudge sundaes? Would you like nuts on that? I thought that was what everybody did. And the first time I had to fly in the back of the plane, I was like, this completely sucks. Where's the ice cream? And by the way, the seat is tiny. Anyway, I digress. So, flying Delta and flying these other airlines, I'm not talking about just first class, I'm in general, they're just more comfortable. I moved to Nashville and I hated flying Southwest. Just hated the whole pop open policy and all that. You fly Southwest because it's like a bus stop where they have more nonstop flights. They turn them around quickly. They're always on time. They're actually mostly early. They don't charge you for their bags. They don't nickel and dime you. You know what you're going to get. That's the customer they built. Now they're trying to convert and they're trying to compete with all the other airlines offering the same services. They've loaded their board up with their board of directors or ex-airline executives from other airlines. I mean, what are they trying to do? They're trying to compete with airlines that haven't been as successful as they were. So anyway, I digress. When you have private equity, you're gonna have folks. I mean, I'm not saying always. There are some of them certainly that you have private equity or investors that have experience. They have assets. They have resources. They may be strategic, where they've got clients for you. So if you're bootstrapping, then you have to manage your money and hold money aside, and make sure you've got cash flow. Make sure you can make payroll if you have employees. And those are the challenges. I want to say officially, going down is much easier than going up. I'm not breathing quite as hard. I didn't know if I was going to make it on the way up. Anyway, so to wrap it up, how do you stay in business 15 years? You make sure you're investing wisely in your profits, holding them back, saving them, or prepaying expenses, whatever you need to do to maintain your cash flow. You diversify, and you can diversify within your industry. You can diversify across platforms. We just had that recently where in January, it's still kind of hovering out there, I guess, that they're going to shut down TikTok. The people that have built up millions of followers on TikTok, they're freaking out like, what am I going to do now? They weren't diversified. So you can diversify across platforms. You can diversify across monetization. So, don't have all your monetization tied to ads or brands, brand sponsorships. And then, like I said, you can, like we did, and you diversify, across industries. It's still staying within areas that that you're an expert in. And the last thing is you want to find something that you enjoy. I like doing what I'm doing. I've liked it, especially when I'm my own business. I'm kind of at the age now. I go to these conferences. I'm actually in Colorado Springs right now, going to a conference called Housing Wire, which are all the major real estate companies and mortgage companies, to learn. And when I go to these, a lot of people are my age, are in their 60s or 50s, and a lot of them are just talking about retiring. They want to retire. They want to get out of this. And I'm just there thinking, I don't know what I would do if I retired. I wouldn't be able to have a free trip to Colorado Springs to go hiking. But if you have fun with it, I don't subscribe to this thing that it's got to be difficult. It's got to be a slog. If you find something that you enjoy, you can see progress. You hold money back. You diversify. Surround yourself with good people, when you get a chance, and I'll do another video on that, on how to hire the right people, then you will definitely finish well. I hope I can finish this hike well. I feel pretty good that I'm all downhill from here.